He called during my mother's funeral to say my family was nothing. My life exploded that day. It all started with a phone call. The kind that splinters your world into a million irreparable pieces. It rang while I was standing graveside, saying goodbye to my mother, a woman I had been cruelly kept from for years. And on the other end was him. This wasn't just any phone call. It was a declaration of war. A shattering betrayal that ripped away the last vestiges of the life I thought I knew. This is the story of how I finally found the strength to stand up for myself. But the journey was paved with years of emotional manipulation and a devastating secret that threatened to consume everything. My name is Kelly. And this is how my life imploded. We were high school sweethearts, Tom and I. The kind of love story that felt destined, sealed with teenage dreams and promises of forever. My father, a successful man who built his life around a furniture factory, gifted us a beautiful house as a wedding present, a tangible symbol of our supposed happily ever after. As the years ticked by, I poured everything into being the perfect housewife and mother, cooking gourmet meals and crafting the idyllic family life I always envisioned. But behind the facade, a storm was brewing. Tom's career as a sales manager wasn't skyrocketing as quickly as he'd hoped, and resentment began to fester. Damn it, Kelly, I can't take this anymore. He'd explode, slamming his fist on the kitchen table, making me jump. I'm busting my ass at work. And for what? Pennies. Cornered and desperate, he eventually looked at me with those pleading, hungry eyes. Your dad, he could give me a job at his factory. A senior position. I hesitated. My father had always been a pillar of integrity in his business dealings, and the thought of leveraging our relationship felt wrong. But seeing the desperation etched on Tom's face, the fear of what he might become, I relented. Okay, I whispered. I'll talk to him. The next day, I nervously approached my father in his office. Dad, I need to ask you something. Tom's not happy with his job, and I was wondering if you might have a position for him here at the factory. After a tense silence that felt like an eternity, my father nodded slowly. All right, I'll give him a shot, but he'll have to prove himself like anyone else. When I told Tom the news, his face lit up with manic relief. He swept me up and spun me around the kitchen. You're amazing, Kelly. This is going to change everything for us. And in a way, it did. Tom started earning significantly more money. But the change wasn't all positive. His mother, Helen, a force of nature fiercely protective of her only son, began to exert an insidious influence on our lives. Helen would drop by unannounced, her sharp tongue dissecting my housekeeping, her presence a constant demand for my undivided attention. One afternoon, as I was desperately trying to get dinner ready, Helen barged through the front door. Kelly, I need you to take me shopping right now, I pleaded. Helen, I'm in the middle of cooking. Can it wait until tomorrow? Her eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint appearing within them. Are you saying my needs aren't important after all I've done for this family? Trapped, I conceded. Of course not. Just give me a few minutes to finish up here. As I drove Helen to the mall, and during her relentless complaints about my driving, my cooking, and seemingly everything else, I couldn't help but wonder how my life had become this bizarre circus. I was an intelligent, capable woman, but my own dreams had withered and died, sacrificed at the altar of domesticity. The situation escalated during one particularly frustrating evening. Helen announced, as usual, I'm hungry. Make me something to eat. Biting my tongue to suppress a sharp retort, I abandoned the laundry and trudged to the kitchen. As I prepared a meal, she sat at the kitchen table, a malevolent supervisor, criticizing my every move. You're using too much oil, she snapped. And for heaven's sake, cut those vegetables smaller. Don't you know how to cook properly? I desperately hoped she'd eat quickly and leave. But then came the final insult. I'll be taking this with me, she announced, grabbing the dish. I have bridge club tonight, and this will do nicely for snacks. I stared at her in disbelief. But Helen, that was supposed to be our dinner. Oh, you can always make more, she said dismissively, already heading for the door. It's not like you have anything better to do with your time. As the door slammed behind her, I glanced at the clock, a wave of despair washing over me. Less than an hour to prepare another meal before Tom got home from work. When Tom arrived, he found me frantically trying to get dinner on the table. What's going on here? He demanded, his voice laced with irritation. Why isn't dinner ready? I explained what had happened with his mother. But instead of understanding, Tom's face darkened with anger. Mom was here. And you didn't make her feel welcome, he demanded. Kelly, you know how important family is to me. You should have been more accommodating. Accommodating? I echoed incredulously. Tom. She took our dinner. She treats me like a servant in my own home. Tom shook his head, dismissing my feelings. Clearly. You're exaggerating. Mom just wants to feel loved and appreciated. Is that too much to ask? As we ate the hastily prepared meal in silence, I couldn't help but feel a growing chasm between us. My once high school sweetheart, my closest confidant, now felt like a stranger across the dinner table. One evening, Tom came home from work in a foul mood, his face crimson with anger as he slammed the front door behind him. I stood up for an employee today, Tom announced, his eyes flashing with fury. Your father was treating him unfairly, and I couldn't stand by and watch. And you know what your precious daddy did? He fired me on the spot. This didn't sound like my father at all. There must be some mistake, I thought. Let me talk to Dad and hear his side, but Tom cut me off, his voice a thunderous command. You will not speak to your father. You will not speak to your mother. As far as we're concerned, they no longer exist for us. Do you understand? Trembling, I nodded, too shocked and scared to argue further. In the days that followed, Tom found another job, and his income recovered. But the incident had irrevocably damaged the foundation of our relationship, replacing it with a toxic mix of fear and resentment. When our son, Michael, would ask about his grandparents, Tom would cut him off. You have one grandmother, he would say firmly. My mother. That's all you need to know. As Michael prepared to leave for college in another city, I felt a profound sense of loss. My baby was growing up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing the only ally I had in this increasingly hostile household. Over the next few years, my life descended into a monotonous routine, an endless cycle of chores and Helen's relentless criticism, made all the more unbearable without Michael as a buffer. One afternoon, as I was scrubbing the kitchen floor under Helen's watchful gaze, the phone rang. I reached for it, but Helen snatched it away. I'll answer it. You focus on getting that floor clean. I gritted my teeth and returned to my tasks, but I couldn't help overhearing Helen's side of the conversation. Yes. This is the residence of Kelly, who... Helen's voice dripped with disdain. I'm sorry, but Kelly isn't available to speak with you. Please don't call again. My head snapped up. That was your father, I cried out, but Helen had already hung up the phone. I told him not to call or contact you again. You should be thanking me for protecting this family from those toxic people. A surge of anger and frustration coursed through me. You had no right to do that. He's my father. I should have been allowed to speak to him. You ungrateful little... But before she could finish, Tom walked in, his brow furrowed. What's going on here? He demanded. Helen immediately adopted a wounded expression. Your wife is being so disrespectful to me after all I do for this family. He then turned his attention to me. Is this true? Kelly, are you disrespecting my mother? I opened my mouth to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I realized with a sinking heart that it didn't matter what I said. Tom would always take Helen's side. A year passed since that fateful phone call from my father, And life continued its suffocating routine, the walls closing in tighter with each passing day. Then, one morning, the phone rang while I was preparing breakfast. Tom was in the shower, and Helen hadn't yet arrived for her daily inspection of my housekeeping. For once, I was able to answer without interference. "Hello," I said tentatively. "Kelly, is that you?" The voice on the other end was familiar, yet distant. It was my father's voice, trembling with emotion. "Kelly, it's your mother. She's very ill. The doctors, they don't think she has much time left. She needs you." "We both do." Just then, I heard the bathroom door open, and Tom's footsteps approaching. "I promise I'll try," I whispered before hanging up. When Tom entered the kitchen, he regarded me suspiciously, his gaze piercing. "Who was that on the phone?" he demanded. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. It was my father. "My mother. She's dying. I need to go see her." Tom's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. "Absolutely not. We've been through this. Kelly, your parents don't exist for us anymore." Something snapped inside me, a lifetime of suppressed anger and resentment finally reaching its breaking point. For the first time in years, I stood up to him, my voice trembling but resolute. "I'm going, Tom. With or without your permission. She's my mother, and I won't let her die without saying goodbye." Tom's jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with rage. "Fine," he spat. "One day. That's all you get. And then you come back home, where you belong." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. One day was better than nothing. With shaking hands, I called my son, Michael, and told him what was happening. To my surprise and immense relief, he immediately offered to accompany me. The next morning, Michael and I set off for my childhood home. When we arrived, my father met us at the door. He looked older than I remembered, his face etched with grief and weariness. Without a word, he pulled me into a tight embrace, a silent acknowledgement of the years we had lost. He then led us to my mother's room. She lay in bed, pale and frail, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Kelly," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. "My baby girl." "Mom, I'm here," I sobbed, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me?" She smiled weakly, her gaze filled with love and understanding. "There's nothing to forgive, sweetheart. I'm just glad you're here now." We spent the day by her bedside, sharing stories, memories, and quiet moments of connection. As the sun began to set, my mother's breathing became labored. She squeezed my hand and looked into my eyes, her gaze piercing and filled with urgency. "Kelly," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "Promise me you'll live your life. Don't let anyone cage your spirit again." Tears streamed down my face as I nodded, my heart breaking with grief. She smiled one last time, a peaceful expression washing over her face, then closed her eyes. Suddenly, my phone began to ring incessantly. I knew without looking that it was Tom. I answered the call, moving to the hallway for privacy, my hands shaking. Tom's voice, sharp with anger, cut through the line. "You were supposed to be back hours ago, Tom. I can't leave yet," I stammered, my voice choked with tears. "What's the matter with you?" "My mother just passed away," I managed to say. "I need to stay for the funeral." "Absolutely not," he roared, his voice a thunderous command. "I told you one day. And that's all you get." His words hung in the air, a brutal reminder of his callous disregard for my feelings. For a moment, I was tempted to give in, to retreat back into the familiar darkness of my subservient role. But then I remembered my mother's last words, her impassioned plea for me to live my life fully, to break free from the chains that bound me. I took a deep breath, my voice steadier than I felt, and said, "I'm staying." I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I had defied Tom, for the first time in our married life, and it felt liberating. The next few days passed in a blur of grief and funeral preparations. On the day of the funeral, as we stood solemnly around my mother's grave, my phone began to ring again. Tom's number flashed on the screen. Without thinking, I pressed the speaker button, if only to quickly silence the incessant ringing. Tom's voice, loud and angry, burst forth for all to hear. "If you don't come home right now, I swear I'll come and drag you back myself. You ungrateful filth. After everything I've done for you." The mourners around us looked shocked and appalled. My father looked more concerned than anything else. He pulled me aside as soon as the service was over, his face etched with worrying. "Kelly," he said gently, "we need to talk." We walked to a quiet corner of the cemetery, away from the prying ears, and my father took a deep breath, his gaze filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Sweetheart," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "there's something you need to know about Tom, something I should have told you years ago." I listened in stunned silence as my father revealed a devastating truth. Tom hadn't left the company all those years ago because he had stood up for an employee. It was because my father had caught him stealing money from the company and manipulating prices. "I fired him to protect the company and our clients," my father explained. "I didn't tell you because I thought you loved him, and I didn't want to come between you. But now, hearing how he speaks to you, seeing what your life has become, I can't stay silent anymore." I felt as if the ground had opened up beneath my feet, swallowing me whole. All these years, I had believed Tom's lies, allowing him to isolate me from my family, enduring his Aunt Helen's emotional abuse, all based on a foundation of deceit. My father added, "I recently heard from a friend that Tom's company is under investigation. There are discrepancies. Kelly, I think he might be up to his old tricks again." As the full impact of his words hit me, the life I had known crumbled around me, leaving me shattered and adrift. Michael and I decided to return to my house, but the tranquility was immediately shattered upon arrival. It was bustling with activity. Helen's friends were milling about, and the smell of food wafted from the open windows. We walked in to find a full-blown party in progress. Helen, holding a glass of wine, her eyes narrowed as she took in my father and Michael, sneered. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I was momentarily stunned. In all the turmoil of the past few days, I had completely forgotten about Helen's birthday. "Don't just stand there," she snapped. "Start cleaning up." My father, who had been silently observing everything, suddenly erupted, his voice filled with righteous anger. "How dare you speak to my daughter that way?" he thundered. "She's not a dog to follow your commands. She's a grown woman who deserves respect. She gave up any right to respect when she married my son. Her family is Tom and me now," was her cutting retort. I watched in disbelief as my father and Helen argued, their voices rising, the party guests looking uncomfortable, and sure whether to leave or stay. Suddenly, Tom burst into the room, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded. "Kelly, why aren't you serving the guests? And what are they doing here?" He gestured angrily towards my father and Michael. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and anger came pouring out in a torrent of long-silenced emotion. "No, Tom," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "I'm not serving anyone. I'm not cleaning up. And I'm not staying silent anymore." The room had gone deathly quiet. Even Helen seemed at a loss for words. "I know the truth, Tom," I continued, pulling out the divorce papers I had hastily prepared. "And I'm done. I want a divorce. Realizing he was outnumbered and exposed, Tom deflated, his bravado crumbling. Fine. He spat, his voice laced with venom. Take your divorce. But don't think you'll get a penny from me. I couldn't help but smile, a small flicker of triumph in my eyes. This house is mine, Tom. My father gave it to us as a wedding gift. Remember? You're the one who needs to leave. Tom and Helen left shortly after, their faces contorted with anger and disbelief. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted but also strangely liberated. Michael, who had been quietly observing everything, finally spoke up. Mom, why didn't you tell me things were so bad? I'm sorry, Michael, I said, my voice filled with remorse. I thought I was protecting you, but I realize now that I was just teaching you the wrong lessons about love and respect. In the weeks that followed, my life transformed dramatically. The divorce proceedings began, and I threw myself into rebuilding my life, determined to create a future free from Tom's control. My father, true to his word, stood by me every step of the way, offering unwavering support and guidance. One afternoon, as we sat in his study discussing the future, my father broached a subject I hadn't expected. Kelly, he began, his voice gentle but serious. I've been thinking, I'm not getting any younger, and the factory needs new blood. How would you feel about coming to work with me? But Dad, I don't know anything about running a business, I protested, feeling overwhelmed by the prospect. He chuckled, a warm, reassuring sound. Neither did I when I started. He said, You're smart, Kelly. You can learn. Besides, it's about time you had a chance to spread your wings. Over the next few months, I immersed myself in learning the business, eager to prove myself and make my father proud. He was a patient and supportive teacher, guiding me through the intricacies of running a furniture factory. I discovered a passion for design and innovation that I never knew I possessed. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings dragged on. Tom, true to form, fought me every step of the way. He contested the ownership of the house and even attempted to turn Michael against me, resorting to every dirty trick he could muster. But in the end, justice prevailed. I was awarded the house and substantial financial compensation for years of emotional abuse. Tom, facing charges for his fraudulent activities, found himself deep in debt and unable to secure employment and had lost all credibility. And Helen, having lost her grip on our lives, simply faded into the background. The last I heard, she had moved in with a distant relative. Her influence finally diminished. Time went by quickly, and then one Sunday morning my father called me into his office. His face was solemn as he gestured for me to sit. Kelly, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. I'm not well, he said. The doctors, they don't think I have much time left. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Dad, no, I whispered, reaching for his hand. He squeezed my fingers gently. It's okay, sweetheart, I've had a good life. He said, life, and now I can go knowing that you're strong, that you're free, that you'll be okay. Tears streamed down my face as he continued. I'm leaving everything to you, Kelly, the business, the house, he stated. You've more than proven yourself, he said to me. I know you'll take good care of it all. In the weeks that followed, we spent as much time together as possible. My father's condition deteriorated rapidly. He passed away peacefully in his sleep, leaving behind a legacy that I was now responsible for carrying forward. The news of my father's passing and my inheritance spread quickly through our small town. I was still adjusting to my new reality when an unexpected visitor arrived at my door. Opening the door, I was shocked to see Tom standing there, a bouquet of flowers in his hand, and an apologetic look on his face. Kelly, he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it in years. I'm so sorry about your father, may I come in? We stood in the foyer, and awkward silence hanging between us. Finally Tom spoke. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Kelly, about us, said Tom, looking remorseful about our life together. he continued. I know I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I've changed. My mother, he added, and she passed away last month. She was the one who always came between us, Tom stated remorsefully. Now there's nothing stopping us from being happy together again. And as I opened my mouth to respond, I heard the sound of a car pulling up in the driveway. A moment later, the front door opened, and a tall, distinguished-looking man walked in. Kelly, darling, I'm home. I heard this man call out, but then stopped short when he saw Tom, confusion and anger dawning on his face. Who the hell is this? He demanded. The man stepped forward, extending his hand to Tom. I'm David, Kelly's husband, and with that Tom ignored the outstretched hand, his face contorting with rage. Husband, what the hell, Kelly, he spat, David's expression hard. He stepped between Tom and me, his voice low and dangerous. I suggest you leave now and never speak to my wife that way again. Tom lunged forward, but David was quicker. He caught Tom by the arm and firmly escorted him to the door. This is your only warning, said David calmly. Stay away from Kelly. If you ever come near her or insult her again, you'll regret it. Screeching tires faded away. David turned to me, his face softening with concern. Are you okay, love? I nodded, stepping into his embrace. I'm fine, I'm just glad you're home, I stated thankfully. And I'm glad you waited for me after all these years, I declared. David chuckled, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I've loved you since high school, Kelly, he said to me lovingly. I would have waited forever if I had to. As we stood there in each other's arms, I marveled at how life had come full circle. David and I had been high school sweethearts before Tom came into the picture. After my divorce, we married in a quiet ceremony 6 months ago, starting a new chapter in both our lives. Mom, great news, is what I heard from my son. Jessica's pregnant, you're going to be a grandmother. In the months that followed, life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Michael and his wife Jessica moved back to our city, eager to be close to family as they prepared for their baby's arrival. Looking back, the phone call during my mother's funeral was the catalyst that shattered my old life, forcing me to confront the truth about Tom and ultimately leading me to a place of strength, independence, and genuine happiness. So, tell me honestly, based on everything you've heard, do you think I handled the situation correctly? Was I justified in finally standing up to Tom and reclaiming my life? Or should I have tried harder to salvage the marriage? What are your thoughts on how I dealt with Helen? And do you think my father should have told me about Tom's past sooner? I'm eager to hear your perspectives and learn from your insights. So please share your opinions openly and honestly. I'm ready for your feedback.